You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I've got an interesting show for you today. A couple NFL stories. I'll be previewing Kentucky versus Texas Tech, and I'll do a little New York Jets hodgepodge. I figured with the Giants dominating the news with Eli Manning retiring, I wanted to give my favorite football team a little love. But I will start with Antonio Brown. It's a story that I've been avoiding talking about just because I knew that there were going to be new developments to it, and I wanted to wait until the story reached its apex. And I don't know how much worse it can get than Brown finally turning himself into police. He has posted bail, $100,000, which to him is chump change. There are really only two angles that you can attack this story from. The first one is that he's suffering from some kind of mental illness, whether it's CTE or something else. I mean, if you look at his behavior from the past 5 months, you can tell that this guy probably has a couple screws loose. Not that there's anything wrong with that, mind you. It just means that you need to get the proper help. It's clear that he wasn't getting it, and now this is the result of it. The second one is that he's just plain stupid, and he's selfish, and he's putting his whole career in jeopardy because he's just not getting his way. I don't think that's what's happening here. I don't think that anyone, whether it's Odell Beckham, Antonio Brown, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, whatever diva wide receiver you want to pull out of history, would go to this extent. Because now Antonio Brown is infected with the coronavirus. He is untouchable now to an NFL team. At the end of the day, all the diva wide receivers, they want to play. They want to prove everyone wrong. Brown can't do that anymore. He's untouchable. There is no NFL team that's going to sign him anytime soon. I mean, if the Patriots can't fix him, can anyone else? I mean, the Saints brought him in for a workout. It didn't go the way he hoped. And then he blasts the Saints. I mean, come on. No one is that stupid. No one. It is clear that this guy does have a mental issue. And again, it's okay to have a mental health issue. We just need to diagnose it and treat it. Is it unfair to speculate on exactly which one it is? Yes. But it's not a stretch to say that he has a couple screws loose. I don't think that's unfair to say at all. Anyone who acts the way that he's been acting kinda deserves that. They deserve to get accused of that. This is a guy that was on top of the world. He was the best wide receiver in football. He got his way. We all knew that he was miserable in Pittsburgh. He forced a trade to Oakland, where he would have been instantly their best player. He ends up with a Super Bowl winning coach, a team that's clearly on the rise, a team that's going into a huge media market, and he would have been the face of that team. But of course he has an issue with the helmet. It devolves into a whole circus with Mike Mayock. The Raiders eventually cut him, even though they traded 2 picks for him. He latches on with the Patriots. He only plays 1 game. He sits out. He acts up. The Saints bring him in for a workout. It doesn't go the way that he hoped. He blasts the Saints. And now this. Yeah, he has a mental health issue. We can't say definitively that it's CTE, but I think it's fair to say that this guy does need help. He needs a team of clinically trained psychiatrists and psychologists. Now, the good news is that it seems like he will get that help. By turning himself in, it means that he knows that there was an issue, and hopefully the justice system mandates that he get counseling. Drew Rosenhaus has said that he will not represent Brown until he gets help. Maybe Rosenhaus can make a few calls to some doctors and try to organize something localized to Antonio Brown's neighborhood. It's not too late for this to be salvaged. If Antonio Brown buckles down and in the offseason dedicates himself to getting his mental health in check, there's no reason to think that he can't end up back in the NFL. And it would be a great redemption story if he ends up on a team like, let's just say, the Jets, hypothetically. If the Jets pick him up, he can say, yes, I had this, I had that, I got treatment for it, and I'm better now. And he could become a great advocate for mental health awareness. It's something that I'm very passionate about. You heard it with Delonte West. I've had a bunch of people in my life that have suffered from mental health disorders, and I've seen what it can do to people. Again, the good news is it's not too late for Brown to turn his life around. He just needs to get the proper care, and maybe I'm being a cockeyed optimist here, but it seems like he's on his way to getting it. Speaking of the Raiders, I do want to talk about a move they made. No, it's not the one from Oakland to Las Vegas. That is very, 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 very old news. I want to talk about them signing Nevin Lawson to another year. This is a guy who wasn't supposed to start for them last year, but he earned his way into the starting lineup. He started 5 games, and he was okay. He wasn't great. He wasn't terrible. According to Pro Football Focus, he had a 60.8 overall grade. That's really not good for a starter, but if you have him as a 4th quarterback, it's perfectly fine. There are many, many, many worse cornerbacks in the league than Nevin Lawson. I don't mind the Raiders bringing him back for another year. They're only paying him $3.3 million for next year, so I can't get upset at the move. The funny thing is that he actually won't be on the field for their first game as the Las Vegas Raiders. He was suspended for 1 game for using his helmet as a weapon in the season finale against the Broncos this year. All in all, I like the move. It's not a lot of money. He's not a bad cornerback. I approve it. Moving on now to Kentucky versus Texas Tech. This is the only college basketball game this weekend that's featuring 2 ranked teams. I'll start with Kentucky. This is a very, very impressive Kentucky team. It's a team that's not solely dependent on freshmen, which is something that Calipari has done in the past, and it's something that I absolutely hate. I hate what John Calipari has done to the NCAA. He's made it into a one-and-done factory. There's no player development anymore. And Krzyzewski has done that a little bit too, but not to the extent that Calipari has. Calipari has really started that trend, and I'll never forgive him for it. But I like what he's done this year. Out of their 4 best players, only one of them is a freshman, and that's Tyrese Maxey. He has a couple sophomores in there, in Ashton Hagans and Emmanuel Quickley, and the junior is Nick Richards. This is a very, very well-rounded Kentucky team. It's a team that can beat you in a bunch of different ways. They can beat you by getting to the free throw line a lot. They can beat you in a shootout, whether it's from 3 or from 2. They can beat you defensively. This is a very, very impressive Kentucky team, and it's a team that I think is going to make a lot of noise in March. And when you look at Texas Tech, I've talked about them in the past. They're another very well-rounded team. Chris Beard preaches defense, and he's done it again this year, and it has paid off in spades. Texas Tech has the 31st best defense in the nation, and that is out of 353 teams. And this is a Texas Tech team that, while they don't have a player like Jared Culver anymore, they have 4 guys that are picking up that slack in Jameis Ramsey, David Moretti, Kyler Edwards, and Terrence Shannon Jr. Any one of them is capable of going off for 20 on any given night. The way that Texas Tech built this team is really, really interesting to me. Those 4 players, none of them are taller than 6'6". And none of them weigh more than 210 pounds. That's both Terrence Shannon Jr., by the way. They're built solely on guard play. They have no big men. You want to tell me TJ Holyfield? You know what? He's not a world beater. If you're a team that plays great perimeter defense, they're going to beat you with Edwards and Shannon. If you're a team that walls up, they're going to beat you with Ramsey and Moretti. This is a Texas Tech team that can beat you in a bunch of ways, just like Kentucky can. This is a very, very even matchup. It's in Texas, so I'm probably going to pick Texas Tech. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Kentucky won, but I'll go with the Red Raiders. Alright, it's time to start the New York Jets Hodgepodge, and I'll do that with this day in sports history. On this day, 10 years ago, the New York Jets lost to the Indianapolis Colts 30-17 in the AFC Championship game. I remember it vividly. I remember watching that game fully expecting my team to win. Yes, the Jets were vastly, and I mean vastly, outmatched on offense. But in the playoffs, a great defense usually beats a great offense in the NFL, and the Jets had the best defense in the league that year. It was the first year of Rex Ryan, and he brought in a bunch of former Ravens. He brought in Bart Scott, he brought in Jim Leonard, and he brought in Marquise Douglas. But those weren't the most important moves that the Jets made. The most important move that the Jets made was trading up for Mark Sanchez. And, look, as much flack as Sanchez gets, he did lead the Jets to 2 straight AFC title game appearances. Now, I understand that it was the defense that carried them in the regular season. I get that. But Mark Sanchez was a very, very good playoff quarterback. It's weird. Whenever the lights were on bright, he just turned it on. The 2 losses that he has in the playoffs, those weren't his fault. And he was still the quarterback of 2 teams that was 1 win away from making it to the Super Bowl. I don't care what your regular season numbers are. You still get credit for that. Mark Sanchez is not remembered as fondly as he should be, and he should have been a lot better than he was. The Jets just stupidly traded for Tim Tebow, but I'm rambling. That's an issue for another day. I want to go back to the 2009 AFC Championship game. In the first quarter, the Jets came out really, really strong. The first play from scrimmage, Manning got a first down, but then it was 3 and out. And the Jets then drove down the field where Jay Feely was in range to kick a 44-yarder. But it was no good. That's going to be a theme. Manning took over. 3 and out. Sanchez, 3 and out. Finally, Peyton Manning starts to figure out the Jets' defense. Pierre Garçon makes 3 catches. Remember that name, Pierre Garçon. Made 3 catches to help get the Colts in field goal range. Colts are up 3-0. On the next play from scrimmage, and I remember this vividly, and this was the moment that I really, really thought that the Jets were going to win this game. Mark Sanchez found Braylon Edwards for an 80-yard touchdown catch. I was doing backflips. I was so happy. But then Peyton Manning did Peyton Manning things. The Jets couldn't stop the run. A bunch of different Colts killed him. Austin Collie, Reggie Wayne, that Garçon guy again. And Matt Stover kicked a field goal to make it 7-6 Jets. But Jets are still winning. Next drive. Thanks to a crazy Brad Smith pass to Jericho Cotchery. Brad Smith, the original Jets Wildcat quarterback. The Jets had 1st and 10 at the Colts 12. And Sanchez was then able to find Dustin Keller for a touchdown. 14-6 Jets. I am doing backflips at this point. Bear in mind, I'm only 12 years old at this point. So now I probably wouldn't be as optimistic, but my 12-year-old self was going nuts. And it was going nuts especially after 3 plays from scrimmage later, Joseph Adai fumbled, and Jim Leonard recovered it for the Jets. Jay Feely kicks a field goal just before the 2-minute warning, and the Jets are up 17-6. If the Jets can hold that lead, they have a great chance of just killing the Colts' spirits, and maybe they win that game. And at this point, my 12-year-old self is bouncing off the walls. It was like I had 5 cups of coffee with 5 cups of sugar in each one. I was going bananas. But then Peyton Manning engineered an incredible drive at the end of the quarter. He found Austin Collie 3 times. Frickin' Austin Collie. It's amazing. Going into that game, everyone said that the Jets could not let Reggie Wayne kill them. That was the guy who they needed to shut down. And Darrelle Revis, throughout his whole career, owned Reggie Wayne. And it didn't change in this game. But this is what made Peyton Manning so great. He was able to find other targets like Pierre Garçon and Austin Collie. And those guys are the pass catchers that killed the Jets. And I'll get into Garçon a little bit more later. Jets go into the half with a 17-13 lead. Okay, fine. You're going into the half with the lead. It should have been more, but whatever. You gotta be happy. Jets get the ball to start the second half. Sanchez drives him down to the Colts 34. Jay Feely misses a field goal. Pierre Garçon strikes on the next drive. He caught 4 passes, including a touchdown to give the Colts the lead, and they would never relinquish it. The biggest mistake that Rex Ryan ever made as Jets coach was not switching Darrelle Revis onto Pierre Garçon. Would Reggie Wayne have probably killed them if a guy like Donald Strickland or Dwight Lowery was on him? Yeah, but you have to take that chance. Maybe Reggie Wayne just had a case of the dropsies that day. He wasn't good in that game. He only had 3 catches. And he fumbled once, for goodness sake. It's the biggest mistake that Rex Ryan ever made as Jets coach. Just switch Revis onto Garçon, and maybe, just maybe, they win that game. Because all throughout that game, Garçon was killing him. Pierre frickin' Garçon. There was a friend of mine who once referred to Pierre Garçon as a tight end. And I wanted to strangle him after he did it. It's okay to make mistakes, but when you can't remember a guy who killed my team in a playoff game, yeah, I'm gonna get really upset at that. But fortunately now we're able to have a really good laugh about it, and he's one of my best friends to this day. His name's Eric. I'll give him a shout out. He's a good guy. After that, the Jets could just get nothing going offensively or defensively for that matter. Peyton Manning had a bunch of really impressive drives, and the Colts won 30-17 en route to losing to the Saints in the Super Bowl. But boy, oh boy, I gotta tell you, I like Rex Ryan a lot. He's the second best coach in Jets history, but I will never, ever forgive him for not putting Darrelle Revis on Pierre Garçon. Garçon, in that game, had 11 catches for 151 yards and a touchdown. And Austin Collie had 7 catches for 123 yards and 1 touchdown. If you neutralize Garçon, maybe they win that game. Alright, while I'm on a roll with the Jets, it's time for their Mount Rushmore. This is the hardest Mount Rushmore I've done so far. And I know that I've only done 3, but I gotta tell you, I thought about this for a long time, and I'm still wavering on it. 1 and 2 are Joe Namath and Don Maynard. That's indisputable. But after that, it gets tough. Do you go with 2 other guys from the Super Bowl team? Do you go a little more modern? It's really, really tough. Ultimately, I decided to exclude any more Super Bowl winners from this. If Sam Darnold wins a Super Bowl for the Jets, he will be on this Mount Rushmore, but no more Super Bowl 3 members, with all due respect to Larry Grantham and Winston Hill. Mo Lewis cannot be on their Mount Rushmore just because he is the one who injured Drew Bledsoe and forced the Patriots to insert Tom Brady. Other than that, though, great linebacker. Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you like the show? There were a bunch of guys who I was debating between for the final two spots. Guys like David Harris, Curtis Martin, Sean Ellis, Mark Gastineau, Kevin Mawai, Nick Mangold, Darrelle Revis, and DeBrickashaw Ferguson. But I only had room for two, and I decided to go with... Man, I gotta tell you, I'm still thinking about it. Oh, man, this is hard. Alright. I'm gonna stick with my original answer. Darrelle Revis and Curtis Martin. If you disagree with me, if you want to put someone else there, no problem. This is really, really hard, but Darrelle Revis is a future Hall of Famer because of what he did with the Jets. You could put any wide receiver, and I mean anyone, on Darrelle Revis, and Revis would shut him down. You could put Jerry Rice in his prime on Darrelle Revis in his prime, and I guarantee you, Revis would make Jerry Rice look mortal. I still have a Revis Island t-shirt. Curtis Martin, there's probably a little bit of a nostalgia filter there for me. He was the first big Jets star that I remember. He was my favorite player when he was on the Jets. And he was the seminal reason that the Jets made the playoffs in the early to mid 2000s. Man, I gotta tell you, there was a time when I was utterly convinced, and bear in mind, I was 7 years old, but there was a time I was utterly convinced that Chad Pennington, Curtis Martin, and Lavernius Coles, and Wayne Corbett too, would lead the Jets offense to greatness, would lead them to multiple Super Bowls. And John Abraham would anchor the defense, Kevin Mawai on the offensive line. Oh my God, those were the days. Those are still some of my favorite teams to watch. Alright, before I get too emotional, I'll end the show there. Hope you have a great weekend. On Monday, I'm going to be breaking down the Brooklyn Nets. Not a lot of positives there, but whatever. I ripped the Islanders a new one on Monday, so I could do it again this coming Monday. Of course, you'll get the Jacob Valk show as per usual. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying, shout out to you, Jim Lehrer.